He was warned. He was told to stop. But he believed he was untouchable. A prophecy told him that one woman would make him more powerful than ever. But instead, she became the reason for his downfall. This is how the Dosa King's obsession led him straight to his doom. The morning of October 31, 2001, dawned like any other in Kodaikanal's misty forests. The air was crisp, the silence broken only by rustling leaves and distant wildlife calls. Forest guards Murugesan and Raman were on their usual patrol, tracking animal movements and noting disturbances. But what they found that day was beyond anything they'd encountered before. Half hidden by undergrowth near a steep incline lay a man's lifeless body. His clothes were disheveled, his face swollen, and his skin showed early signs of decay. The body's positioning suggested it had been dumped, not fallen. There were no signs of an animal attack or struggle, no visible wounds, yet something was deeply wrong. Murugesan noticed dark bruising around the man's neck, clear marks of strangulation. This was no accident, it was murder. When local police arrived, the mystery deepened. The deceased wasn't a local, raising questions about his identity and how he ended up in such a remote area. Forensic teams documented the scene, but the lack of an obvious motive left investigators puzzled. As whispers of suspicion spread, a shocking name emerged: Rajagopal. Rajagopal wasn't a criminal or gangster. He was a self-made billionaire, owner of Saravana Bhavan, one of India's most successful restaurant chains. Known as the Dosa King, he was revered by thousands. How could a man celebrated for his culinary empire be linked to such a heinous crime? The answer lay in a dark past of obsession, power, and desperation. Rajagopal's rise to fame masked a troubling personal life, one marked by control and manipulation. The victim, it turned out, was connected to a love triangle involving Rajagopal, whose obsession with a woman had spiraled into violence. The murder was a chilling culmination of his unchecked desires. The case exposed the duality of Rajagopal's life, a public figure adored by many, yet privately capable of unspeakable acts. It served as a stark reminder that even those who seem untouchable can harbor dark secrets. The Dosa King's fall from grace remains a haunting chapter in India's history, a tale of ambition corrupted by obsession. Long before his name became linked to crime, Rajagopal was a man driven by ambition. Born in 1947 in a small Tamil Nadu village, he came from humble beginnings. His family, part of the Nadar community, struggled to make ends meet. With limited education and no formal training, Rajagopal had to forge his own path. In his early 20s, he opened a small grocery store in Chennai named Murugan Stores. Though modest, he ran it with meticulous attention to detail, focusing on quality to build a loyal customer base. But Rajagopal dreamed bigger. One day, while working, he overheard a customer lamenting the lack of good restaurants in the area. The comment struck a chord. At the time, dining out wasn't common in Chennai, but Rajagopal saw an opportunity others had missed. By 1981, he had saved enough to take a leap. He opened his first restaurant, Saravana Bhavan, named after Lord Murugan, his beloved deity. From the start, Rajagopal was determined to stand out. While others cut costs with cheap ingredients and underpaid staff, he did the opposite. He sourced the finest ingredients, Guntur chilies, Karnataka tamarind, and prioritized cleanliness. He even provided soap, haircuts, and nail clippers for employees, ensuring they always looked presentable. He introduced unheard-of benefits, free education for workers' children, life insurance, and festival bonuses. His efforts paid off. Saravana Bhavan became a sensation, drawing locals and visitors alike. Word spread, and business boomed. By the late 1990s, Rajagopal's empire had expanded globally, with outlets in Dubai, Singapore, Malaysia, Europe, and the United States. To his followers and employees, he was no longer just a businessman. He was Anachi, a term of reverence meaning elder brother. People saw him as a man of power, wisdom, and generosity. They bowed before him, believing he held the key to their fortunes. But power often breeds arrogance, and success can fuel obsession. Behind the grandeur of Saravana Bhavan, darker desires began to surface. The man the world admired was slowly changing, his moral compass slipping. By the late 1990s, this transformation would lead him down a path of crime, deceit, and ultimately, murder. The Dosa King's fall from grace would reveal the tragic cost of unchecked ambition and the shadows lurking behind his success. By the mid-1990s, Rajagopal was at the height of his success. Saravana Bhavan had become a global brand, his wealth was immense, and his influence in Tamil Nadu was unmatched. He had 2 wives, a family, and countless employees who worshipped him. Yet, despite having everything, Rajagopal wanted more, a desire that would ultimately destroy him. Around this time, Krishnan, a trusted assistant manager, entered his life. Krishnan had a teenage daughter named Jivajyothi, young, bright, and full of innocence. Rajagopal became obsessed with her. He was in his 50s, she was barely 20. But for him, age was irrelevant. An astrologer had told him that marrying Jivajyothi would bring him even greater success and power. This prophecy consumed him. There was just one problem: Jivajyothi was in love with someone else. She had married Prince Santhakumar, a mathematics tutor, in April 1998, and moved to South Chennai with him. She believed she was starting a new life, unaware she had become the fixation of one of Tamil Nadu's most powerful men. Rajagopal was enraged. He saw Jivajyothi's marriage as a personal affront. How could an ordinary man like Prince take what he believed was rightfully his? Determined to have her, Rajagopal began a campaign of manipulation and coercion. First, he tried to bribe her, offering money and promising to help her start a business if she left her husband. When she refused, he turned to threats. He fired her father from Saravana Bhavan and seized their home, leaving the family in dire straits. Still, Jivajyothi stood her ground. But Rajagopal's obsession knew no bounds. When persuasion and intimidation failed, he resorted to violence. One night, Prince and Jivajyothi disappeared. No one knew where they had gone. Days turned into weeks, and an unsettling fear gripped those who knew them. Something terrible had happened. The truth, when it finally emerged, was horrifying. Rajagopal had orchestrated their abduction. Prince was murdered, and Jivajyothi was forced into a sham marriage with Rajagopal. The crime shocked Tamil Nadu, exposing the dark side of a man once celebrated as a visionary. Rajagopal's fall from grace was as dramatic as his rise. His wealth and influence could not shield him from the consequences of his actions. The story of the Dosa King became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how unchecked ambition and obsession can lead to ruin. It remains one of the darkest chapters in Tamil Nadu's history, a chilling testament to the dangers of power without morality. The night of October 26, 2001, would haunt Jivajyothi and Prince forever. For days, they had lived in fear, knowing Rajagopal's men were watching. They tried to stay hidden, but deep down, they knew it was only a matter of time before he struck. That night, as they drove home on the Chennai-Pondicherry highway, a car suddenly blocked their path. Another pulled up behind, trapping them. Men armed with knives and rods dragged them out. Among the attackers was Daniel, one of Rajagopal's most trusted men. This shocked Jivajyothi the most. Daniel had secretly warned her about Rajagopal's plans. She had trusted him. Now, he betrayed her. Prince fought back, but he was overpowered. The men beat him mercilessly, leaving him bloodied on the ground. Jivajyothi screamed and begged, but they shoved her into a car and sped away. She didn't know where they were taking her, only that Prince was gone. They arrived at a secluded farmhouse where Rajagopal waited, smiling as if she were a long-lost lover. "Why do you resist?" he asked calmly. "You were always meant to be mine." Horrified, Jivajyothi demanded, "Where is my husband?" Rajagopal ignored her. Instead, he handed her a pen and a blank sheet of paper. "Sign this," he said. It was a statement claiming she had willingly left Prince and wanted to marry him. She refused. His smile vanished. "You don't understand," he said coldly. "You have no choice." For days, Jeevajyothi was held in isolation, guarded by Rajagopal's men. She didn't know if Prince was alive or dead. Then, one morning, a whisper came from outside her door. It was one of Rajagopal's own men. "Run," he urged. "Before it's too late." Heart pounding, she slipped out, running barefoot into the darkness. But no matter how far she ran, the nightmare wasn't over. Rajagopal's reach was long, and his obsession knew no bounds. The Dosa King's descent into darkness had only just begun, leaving a trail of fear and tragedy in its wake. The night Jeevajyothi escaped, she ran to the Chennai police commissioner's office, breathless and terrified. She recounted everything: the threats, the abduction, the beatings, and Rajagopal's attempts to force her into signing false documents. But one question haunted her: where was Prince? The police registered her complaint, but their hesitation was palpable. Rajagopal wasn't just a businessman, he was a billionaire with deep political and financial ties. Officers, politicians, and bureaucrats were rumored to be in his pocket. Could they really take him down? Days passed with no action. Meanwhile, Rajagopal's men stalked Jeevajyothi, sending threats through her relatives. Then, in early November 2001, a breakthrough came. The Kodaikanal Forest Department reported a grim discovery. Two forest guards, Murugesan and Raman, had found a decomposing body in the wilderness. The man had been strangled, his body left to rot. The police confirmed the victim's identity: it was Prince Santhakumar. For Jeevajyothi, the news was devastating. The man she had loved, the man she had defied a billionaire for, was gone. The police now had undeniable proof: Rajagopal wasn't just a predator, he was a murderer. Yet, the legal battle was just beginning. Rajagopal, still convinced of his invincibility, used his wealth and influence to delay justice. For a while, it seemed he might escape unscathed. But the fight for justice had only just begun. Would the system hold him accountable, or would power prevail? The answer would shape not just Jeevajyothi's life, but the legacy of the Dosa King. The discovery of Prince's body in Kodaikanal sparked public outrage. The media latched onto the case, and the once untouchable Dosa King, P. Rajagopal, found himself at the center of a criminal investigation. Yet, even with the body recovered, arresting him proved difficult. For weeks, Rajagopal evaded questioning, leveraging his political and police connections to delay the process. Witnesses were intimidated, and officers hesitated to act. For a time, it seemed justice might never come. In 2002, the Chennai police finally gathered enough evidence to arrest Rajagopal and several associates, including Daniel, the man who had betrayed Jeevajyothi and played a key role in Prince's abduction. Under interrogation, Daniel confessed. He revealed that Rajagopal had ordered Prince's murder. After the abduction, Prince had been strangled, and his body was dumped in the Kodaikanal hills, left to be erased by nature. But fate intervened. Prince's body had fallen only 15 feet down a slope, getting stuck between trees and rocks. It was discovered by forest guards, ensuring Rajagopal's plan failed. In 2004, the trial began. The prosecution built a strong case, relying on Daniel's confession, police records, and Jeevajyothi's testimony. However, Rajagopal's wealth and influence loomed large. His lawyers argued that Prince's death was not premeditated but a case of culpable homicide. Shockingly, the court agreed, sentencing Rajagopal to just 10 years in prison, a lenient punishment for such a brutal crime. Many believed he had escaped true justice. The prosecution appealed, and in 2009, the Madras High Court overturned the ruling. They declared the crime premeditated murder and sentenced Rajagopal to life in prison. Yet, Rajagopal refused to surrender. He appealed to the Supreme Court of India, dragging the case on for another decade. During this time, he remained free on bail, living comfortably while Prince's family and Jiva Jyoti waited for closure. Finally, in March 2019, the Supreme Court upheld the life sentence. Rajagopal was ordered to surrender immediately. His wealth, empire, and connections could no longer shield him. For Jiva Jyoti, it seemed justice had finally been served. But fate had one last twist. Rajagopal, now in his 70s and in poor health, surrendered only to be hospitalized shortly after. He died in July 2019, never truly facing the consequences of his actions. The Dosa King's legacy remains a haunting tale of power, obsession, and the long, painful road to justice. When the Supreme Court's final ruling came in March 2019, Rajagopal's world crumbled. For nearly 2 decades, he had evaded true punishment, living comfortably while Prince's memory faded. But now, there was no escape. The court ordered his immediate surrender. Yet, Rajagopal had one last trick. Days before reporting to prison, he checked into a private hospital, claiming severe health issues. His lawyers sought a delay, arguing he was too ill to serve his sentence. The court refused. On July 9, 2019, Rajagopal was forcibly removed from his hospital bed and taken into custody. But his time in prison was short-lived. 10 days later, on July 18, he suffered a massive heart attack and died in Chennai Government Hospital. His final wish? That every Saravana Bhavan outlet remain open on the day of his death, a last attempt to flaunt his power. Outside his empire, there were no grand farewells. No mourning crowds. No public tributes. For many, his death felt like unfinished justice. Jiva Jyoti, now living in Tanjavur, expressed no sorrow. She had fought for years to see him punished, but he died without truly facing the consequences. "I will never forget what he did to me," she said. "I fought for justice, but he left this world without suffering the way I suffered. My wound remains a wound." With Rajagopal's death, the story of the Dosa King ended. His name, once revered globally, became synonymous with greed, power, and murder. Saravana Bhavan continues to thrive, but its legacy is forever tainted by the man who built it, not as a visionary, but as a criminal who believed he was untouchable until the end. Power, greed, and obsession, how far can one man go to get what he wants? Rajagopal's story is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind success. Share this story, and let the world know the truth behind the Dosa King.